Okay, we're back after a brief recess, and I'll turn this portion of the meeting back over to Paul. And I think we're doing transportation services next. Okay, or Chris Tranny will take over, I guess. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. All the stuff back up here. Closed for the health unit. Okay, again, it'll stay fairly brief, and I can dig into get granted with any numbers at council's request or at the budget committee's request, I should say. We're trying to maintain our service levels in accordance with our updated asset management profile for life cycle costing of our bridges and roads within the system. As Paul said earlier on in the presentation, we're funding at around 90% of the actual costs of maintaining that infrastructure. You'll see some of the changes in our budget that have kind of evolved over the last couple of years. We essentially moved from a funding model where we transferred funds to reserves in an anticipated level that would cover off our long-term needs for roads and bridges. And at the direction of Budget Committee and Council, we've transitioned into an actual transfer of funding to our capital program. So in previous years, we would have allocated projects over a number of years in order to reduce the amount of fluctuation in the budget. You can see there's a couple of numbers that have fluctuated this year because of the new way, or sort of the more current way of allocating capital dollars to the program. But certainly I can talk more specifically about any of the projects that are within the system, but it's not a huge deviation one way or the other from either way of undertaking that type of capital project funding. I would note that in 2025, we completed the latest round of county road assumptions. We increased our road network by about 1%. So we built in some additional costing into the budget to account for the additional maintenance, operational and capital program costs we're anticipating over the long term with the assumption of these new roads. Excuse me. The other thing that's mentioned here is, we're trying to continue to modernize and improve our service delivery. We actually heard through some of our negotiations with the union, and we've agreed to take a closer look over the coming year at staffing levels. We have challenges across the board with regards to making sure that we're not stretching our teams too thin with regards to days like today. Presents its own set of challenges with regards to some of the regulations and standards we have to follow with regards to hours of work and maintenance standards, et cetera, but also just to make sure that we're carrying that capacity for our staff. We've always maintained a good balance of winter and summer work. We've developed skills within our existing complement of staff to make sure that we're not creating huge swings and layoffs and hires depending on the season. Our staff should be commended on keeping up to date on training, health and safety, and all the rest of the things that we're doing to make sure they're protected, working in safe environments and being efficient with the use of time. You'll see here a big change for us and a big change for me as a deputy engineer position is being recommended to be included in this year's budget. I think those of you who know me know that I'm a big proponent of succession planning. I'm not retiring tomorrow, but it is within a few years when we might be contemplating a bit of a transition here at the county. So we're hopefully going to find an individual that we can transition into this role at some point in the future. I was fortunate to have the same opportunity presented to me when I started with the county about 25 years ago and worked with my predecessor for almost 5 years before he moved on to a different position. And I think that we can show many examples within our own department where most of our technical staff and our middle management have all progressed through the county system, which is really important for transfer of historical knowledge and culture within our environment. And I think, again, you've heard me say this before, we had a real crux here in the next 5 to 10 years with regards to our bridge infrastructure. It seems every bridge we look at needs more work than we can afford, and we stay on top of things as best we can. We have some pretty immense pressures coming within our bridge infrastructure. We will be advocating for some additional funding from the province. Just one example is the Thorndale Bridge, which is due to be replaced in the next couple of years, is an $18 million price tag. So those types of projects are extremely challenging for us when that's one of 200 and something bridges that we have in this county. And I know those pressures exist at the local level as well. I think with that, the only other thing I might talk about just briefly is emergency management and our fire radio system. We're fortunate to, continue to have a good working relationship with Stratford Care Police Department, who've been providing us fire dispatching services for a number of years, and took over our 911 call taking last year. And that's been a very successful program for us. They're working towards this NG 911, which is a modernization of our call taking and dispatching system, which is a huge project for them next year. But we're working with them on that, and we hope to continue to have that positive working relationship by keeping that service within the county of Middlesex with our partners in Stratford Care. I think with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions at a high level or any specifics about the transportation budget.
Sue, if I could just jump in, I'd just like to point out Chris's budgets, transportation services specifically, do a lot of the work in getting, helping us get that significant amount of reserves out of the budget. It's not his budget where those were utilized, but if you look within winter maintenance, there's $500,000 there where we've lowered that budget because we have a winter maintenance reserve to backstop that. And also for capital, we're drawing a little bit heavier on the Canada Community Building Fund and some of those programs. So we just want to point that out because obviously transportation services was not the department that was incurring those one-time revenues, but they're doing a lot of the heavy lifting to help us get out of there. And we appreciate Chris and his team for being able to accommodate that.
Questions? Councilor Rob?
We got to ask questions about this budget, don't we? So to your point, Paul, on that winter maintenance reserve, I do remember a time a few years ago where we didn't have hardly any reserve, and I think at that time there was a move to strengthen that, because it's nice to see we are at this point where we have that number where it is. And so I don't have a problem with it, but I think that's the history of why it was so aggressive. Chris, is that not right? I believe that it was a very low reserve that we had.
Yeah, I mean, we notoriously underfunded winter maintenance for a number of years. And we fortunately had the support of County Council to increase that number by about 7% per year to get us to where we are today. Some of the things that we're doing now, as you can see, getting granted with the numbers showing our actuals for the last number of years. This year is not going to look great at the end of the year, but we have had some positive years where we overfunded winter maintenance. And again, with support of County Council, those surpluses were transferred into that reserve. So part of the way we're helping to support the overall budget through the County Roads Department is to utilize some of those reserves in the future to make sure that, if we have an over expenditure next year with the $4.55 million in winter maintenance costs. Again, I don't have a crystal ball. That could be bang on, could be over, could be under. But we have that reserve, and it is getting healthier by the day. So, there's times to utilize that. And this is one of those times where we can help support other one-time costs within this budget to make sure we're part of the team.
Councilor Grantham?
Yeah, thank you, Warden. To jump to capital if I can, Chris. How long is your list of capital items that are waiting to get done? I know the answer, but I'm going in a direction.
What's our road network? 860 kilometers, 860 kilometers. We run a full life cycle capital program for roads. For bridges, it's a 75-year window. Last time we updated it was about 2018, so we're due to have another closer look at that program again. But the bridge program, again, we were trying to fund that capital transfer to reserves. You can see what those numbers were in previous years. We should be transferring $8 million a year, or expending about $8 million a year on our bridge program on an annualized basis over the 75-year life cycle we have on our structures. But our plans generally look at every structure and every kilometer road in our network.
So I won't ask the loaded question. If you had more money, you could do more, but for the groups, I did look at the capital and it's mostly funded through the levy. There's no debt. And then I know the construction price index, cost of production, construction just keeps going up and up. And the cost of those projects keep going up and up. And the people we represent, they want the projects done. So my question is not answered here. My thought wanders to the, should we be looking at taking on the debt in order to get the projects done? Because the interest payments are even out by the construction price index. I know that. And also people want to see the things done, right? So, if there's a bridge that you may be 1 or 2 years away, it's just a thought for the group. Because I do know we're paying for everything through levy. I'm not a big fan of debt, but sometimes debt is a good thing. So there's more of a comment, Chair, to look at it that way.
Just to give you context, in the previous year budget committees, we did talk about debt financing because historically interest rates have been extremely low. So that's something that has been discussed, and your point's well made. Councilor Rob, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I did. Thank you. To your point about the roads, we hear when roads aren't done, but then as soon as you pave the roads, we get complaints about our new speedway. So I guess my question to that is there thought put into, the impact on that about speed limits or that type of thing? Is that considered part of the conversation when we pay it?
Yeah, I mean, our one of the focuses we have in the roads department is safety. Obviously, it's high on our priorities as far as making our roads as safe as possible for all of our road users, and a lot of the programs and things that we do make sure that we're maintaining a level. Like, again, all the maintenance programs that we do on our roads, try to maintain those roads in a safe condition. To be frank, it is, and this is the reason the deputy engineer is being recommended in this year's budget. It's just become, with everything we're doing, things are getting overwhelming for all of us in the roads department, and there's lots of things we would like to do. And my hopes are having some additional capacity within our sort of technical side will allow us to do more things like being proactive with road safety audits, being proactive with looking at, intersection improvements, other road improvements, helping us spend some more time with regards to monitoring programs like our community safety zone program, which I'm happy to see that that's going forward. We'll have a couple of those established this year, but also working in partnership with our local municipal public works officials. It's just a capacity issue for us right now. We need to rebuild some of that capacity. Our mandate and our programming has changed tremendously. I have to congratulate and give a lot of kudos to Ryan Hillinger and his team. Asset management, looking at it might not seem like much, putting a bunch of numbers into something, and there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes with that, and managing that system, managing our asset management, managing our system is a full-time job for many municipalities, and it's becoming that for us. So we're taking a team approach on that. I help out when I can from a macro level, but Ryan and his team do a lot of legwork with that. And we have to remember, we're still doing design in-house. I think that provides a good service for our taxpayers. We can deliver that service at a nonprofit cost. And just maintaining our workforce to be efficient with regards to, performing sort of that small to medium bridge rehabilitation services, doing our rural road reconstruction, doing our in-house design for, traffic signals, rural roads, drainage. All of those types of systems are there, but the pressures are real and mounting, and we do probably more than we should. But I do hope with building some capacity allows us to do some of those nice to do projects, which are important, right? Like road safety is paramount. And we've talked many times about intersections that might not be traffic signal worthy, but some other things we might be able to do when we have that functional capacity back into the system.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris. I did have one more, and that is for the deputy county engineer position. I'm in support of that. I'm just wondering if, I would like to see that left in the budget to do. but I'm wondering if we should, because of Chris's point, with all the pressures and all the things that are happening, should we be doing a review before we hire to make sure we're going in the right direction? Like, this is just what I'm throwing out there.
Go ahead.
Yeah, if I may answer two questions, and I'll turn it over to Chris. Just on the debt management, Chris and our former director were really proactive and have done a draft policy. And we're just really waiting on our new director of finance to come here before we present a debt management policy to county council for approval. And I think in line with that, one of the outstanding resolutions is for staff to bring back a financing mechanism for the new governance administration building. So effectively January 5th, the county will have no debt once the last lodge payment is made. So absolutely, that's a priority for county council to approve a debt management policy and utilize that as a lever in funding our project. And I would just give Chris and his team credit. There is a lot of levy, but there also is a ton of reserve utilization, and then also provincial and federal grants within the capital budget. But point well taken as Chris gets into the larger budgets. So on the debt management policy, that would be the one. And then if I could just proceed, Chris, for 1 second on your question there. I've had the great opportunity to go to a bunch of the service areas, and Chris invited me out to the primary operations center for, I'm going to call it Roads Day. And the entire roads team was there, and they do training updates and talk about everything. And Chris spends a significant amount of the time like communicating to all of our employees, all of our operators, translating council's message and strategic priorities down to something that's operable on the ground. And I would say, I don't want to speak for you, but within that discussion, there was already the concept of doing a comprehensive review of transportation services that Chris was talking about with his team. And I would say I'm fully supportive of that we could work on. And I think that would look at a lot of things that are important from the road operators perspective, equipment life cycles, who does what, how we do things, all that sort of stuff. So I think that point's well received and would be a good project. And maybe I'd turn it over to Chris, but I think that aligns with that exactly. We can have a holistic look at everything. And I just want to say it was on Chris's radar.
Okay, I just want to point out, there's absolutely no disrespect meant by that or nothing like that. But I think that things like we've spread Chris even thinner with things like the governance building, some things we're doing for MLPS for stations, added that to the pile. Right now, that was why I was putting that. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I'll just say a couple quick things. As far as like operational and staffing levels, in the budgets, the rebuild of our Bryanston garage, that's going to provide us servicing capacity for the northeast part of the county, which we're underutilized as far as facilities for winter mains, especially, but other things. So part of our part of the 2027 budget is going to come back to council and say, now that we have this operational capacity in the northeast, we're going to rejig some of our plow routes. We can have staff stationed out of that satellite facility 365 days a year. We can actually park trucks in the building right now. It's for an old single axle truck, so it's well past its due date. So that is a future plan that I would have to come back operationally for our maintenance side. So our operational team, and they're well aware of that project, pending approval by council, of course, will go on the street in January. Design's ready to go, and we're ready to get that out the door. And that will improve our means by which to redistribute our staff and look at it potentially expanding staffing levels for 2027 and beyond. Just on the debt load thing, just very quickly, responding to Councillor Grantham's question. I've had the Thorndale Bridge project in my pocket for a number of years. We completed an EA and we have a 90% detailed design on that structure ready to go, so that when we go and meet with the ministers, if the funding becomes available, someone is ready to write us a check, we're ready to go. And those will be the size and scope of projects that we would need to absolutely look at debt financing to proceed with those projects. We would not be able, we don't have the capacity within our reserves to fund an $18 million project, even if they gave us 50% funding. Even a $9 million project would be challenging. So we're reserving some of that debt capacity for that, understanding we're likely going to use up a significant amount of our debt capacity to fund the new administration building through construction loan. Just so council's aware, we try to have capital projects in the hopper, approved, ready to go within a few months so that we can, hopefully qualify for a grant program, a funding program, or just, support from an MPP or an MP for that matter, for infrastructure funding. So we can show them where we have shovel-ready projects ready to go.
I have a couple of questions. So this proposed deputy engineer, would they be involved with project management, or they would be more higher level? They would be?
Yeah, right now the intent, and again, it's really depending on what's available in the marketplace for us with regards to potential staff. I would like to have someone who can undertake a more active role in project management of our structures. I undertake that on myself just because we don't have capacity through the rest of my technical team to really be on top of some of our more complex bridge replacements and rehabilitation. So I'd look for someone to support the project management, but also provide more robust support to our in-house bridge maintenance and rehabilitation team. And then also support Ryan and his technical team with asset management of our structures. We've had to contract out to consultants just to do some of that asset management side of things. And I think now we have the basis of information. I'd like to do more of that in-house. We just don't have the capacity to do it. Yeah, that'd be a main
thank you.
goal.
Just a couple more questions. The next one being, of the 200 plus or some odd bridges that you mentioned, in the life cycle management stage, are there any that, without ruffling anybody's feathers, that you could decommission, or is that even on the radar? I almost cringe when I say it, but if it's very, very little usage and we're paying for it and there's an alternative route, I'm just curious.
It's a great question, and it's always on our radar. Many of you may not know, we maintain a number of bridges on local roads from our old pre-amalgamation municipal boundaries. Those boundary bridges are still county maintained assets. They're on very low volume roads, but 50 years ago or more, those boundary bridges on our old municipal boundaries were all uploaded to the county. So the county still maintains those bridges. They haven't been downloaded to the local system. We talked about it sort of on a high level about whether that's something we would consider downloading those to some of our local municipalities. And we've done some very high level traffic pattern analysis to see if there's redundancy in the system with regards to taking some of our bridges, decommissioning some of our bridges. We've done it in the past. We decommissioned a bridge in Nairn probably 12 years ago, 13 years ago, because that bridge had been replaced previously with another bridge. The unfortunate reality of the nature of the bridge network in the county is any bridge that we decommission based on traffic volumes has a significantly negative impact on the agricultural community. We create long detours for farmers. I know Councillor Ropp, has some experience because we have looked in detail in North Middlesex. They have an abundance of bridges in their inventory. Did some high level look there, but when you're talking about, okay, you may disrupt someone's commute, or they change their traffic pattern driving from point A to point B. When you're talking about a farmer taking a tractor and adding 8, 9, 10 kilometers to a round trip for them to maintain a farm, that becomes a huge burden on that operation. So we're very mindful that we don't just take a blanket look based on traffic volumes. We're trying to make sure we're not going to impact farmers. So we certainly could look at that again, but it's that may become the harsh reality we have to deal with. It's not a harsh reality we need to deal with today, but it may be something that council in the future might have to make some hard choices about decommissioning some of these bridges in our infrastructure.
Okay, thank you. I know from personal experience, it's not any fun when you have to drive around and then you get the piece of equipment there and all of a sudden the header doesn't work and the only way to fix it is to take it home. So that's not much fun. And my last comment or question, and it's not really mine, it's one of my colleagues, but he didn't bring it up, is given the increase in urban sprawl, if you want to call it that, and the increased traffic coming from whether it be Southwest Middlesex into the city or wherever, even from the north. Um, has there been any consideration to setting up a separate reserve, and this is Brian's idea, for traffic lights, knowing that there's going to be, we're going to see an increased need for that over the years?
I would pass it over to Isaiah because I know this is one of his favorite subjects, but our development charges program contemplates new traffic signals. It contemplates part of it, you'll see in the budget, part of the cost of construction of our Bryanston garage is because we have pressures of additional roads in our network. And that's all predicated on development and growth of traffic within the county. So this year, spoil the report, but this year we're not recommending installation of any traffic signals, but I feel that there are a number in a few years from now where we're going to again get into a bit of a backlog like we had the last couple of years. But we anticipate about 2 a year on average, and that's contemplated in our development charges study. And that goes along with the improvements to the widening of roads, additional lanes of travel, all of our cycling network, all of that good stuff is all anticipated in that. So we are accounting for funding of that through our development charges program.
Okay, thank you. And I think that's important for the public to hear because when development charges are still fairly new for Middlesex County, and a lot of times people don't recognize why we have them and how they don't affect them, but they actually do. So I appreciate you speaking to that. Thank you.
Chris makes me laugh. We had a meeting with a local municipality and a constituent on this matter. I would just say, just to enhance one thing Chris said, and I know it was asked before about responsiveness and timing. So because of the way transportation services and the DC study is structured, that if mid-year suddenly there was a technical warrant to install traffic signals, there is the opportunity for county council to provide Chris and the team direction to advance that in year. So if for some reason that came to be, it's not something now we always just have to wait on till budget so you can advance that. It's just an operational thing, and that's Chris and his team have planned out.
I believe that's what happened this year. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, next up is Brent from the Lodge.
Okay, so for the lodge overall, the proposal is a 5% budget increase. 2% as far as the levy is concerned, a little more than $100,000. This year is the final year of the province's multi-year funding increase to increase staffing. So the budget includes additional hours, particularly for PSWs and nursing staff. As far as expenditures are concerned, about 84% of the lodge's budget is wages and benefits. And of course, we are subject to 2 collective agreements. Only the managers are not unionized at the lodge. So we're subject to the terms of collective agreements as far as wage increases, benefit increases are concerned. I should mention that we're having some success in terms of recruitment, increasing particularly our part-time relief on call, our PSW numbers. So what that does in terms of staffing replacement for sick calls, etc., that helps to minimize the overtime costs that we would pay out as per the collective agreement. So on the non-salary side, we're experiencing typical inflationary pressures. Things like our clinical supplies, syringes, catheters, dressings, all that kind of stuff. Increases as far as our medical record software, our annual maintenance fee for that, utilities such as water increases. As far as capital is concerned, the ask is for 299,000. That's a little more than what we asked for in 2025. 2026 represents the 20th year as far as the lodge is concerned. So, so again, we're seeing, wear and tear, et cetera, et cetera. So capital money requests includes boiler replacement, flooring replacement, and on the resident related side, things like beds and resident lift equipment. Modernization, Chris mentioned how the lodge is included in some of plans. And in addition to that, we're looking forward to the implementation of UKG software, which will help tremendously in terms of scheduling process and the calling out to replace staff with that's a manual process right now, and through automated calls, we'll gain a lot of efficiencies there. And I should also mention that we've successfully recruited a nurse practitioner, a full-time nurse practitioner, and that's a separate pot of money specific from long-term care, the Ministry of Long-Term Care, to fund that position. And the ministry is keen on that position as it helps with things like minimizing transfers to the emergency department. And I think that's it.
I think I'll just jump in again before questions. Brent's the other service area that has done a lot of heavy lifting in helping us keep this overall levy down, maximizing the funding envelopes. And I'd really like to give a shout out to Michael Liebold, our financial analyst who kind of oversees the lodge. So what we've done from a financial perspective is sort of phase one of our GL enhancement process is broken down the presentation of the lodge budget to the 7 subsidiary areas within the lodge, and then the Devonshire on top of that. So it really gives us line of sight, and that sets us up as we move forward to be really aggressive and allow Brent and his team to be really responsive with in-year variance analysis on service provision. But Brent and the team did a great job of that overall budget being a 2% increase, even though as we've broken down these funding envelopes across the 7 subsidiaries, it kind of looks all over, but they've done a really good job with that.
Any questions? Councillor Grantham.
Thanks for the segue, Paul. The funding, I note on administration, the provincial envelope funding there has disappeared, 0. That was one that jumped out at me.
If I can just jump in
Yeah.
on this again, this just comes down to we're trying to show the various funding envelopes specifically under the various segmented areas. So this is the one year where it could look like a mess because historically you would have just got one line item with all those various subsidiary programs grouped as one, but that becomes problematic as we try to do in-year variance analysis with the various programs. So it's really just a presentation.
Just press it, okay. And then secondly, my question for Brad again, is to do with capital. Is there, capital's minimal? You're running a whole, I'm sure, is there a looming capital item coming towards us soon that isn't on the list?
No, not that I can think of. Yeah.
Okay,
We did the big roof project in early 2025 and
okay.
can't think of anything.
The roof was the one that I was thinking, so thank you.
Yeah, no, the roof's been completed and that
Okay.
was all done, and that was an extremely large capital
Okay.
expense.
Okay.
And the boiler, as you mentioned, that's the next thing coming.
Yep.
I'm happy to see, I know it's a small thing, but not really, is the lift. I mean, that helps with worker safety, and it also improves quality of service to the clients that live there. And they are a vulnerable sector, and I think we owe it to them to make sure we're delivering the best service. So I know when you mentioned wages is like 84%, but those are the boots on the ground, and those are the people that are in the physical work. Then they have direct contact with the clients. So I think that's critical, and I'm not too bothered by those numbers. Councillor Rob?
Thank you, Warden. Brent, we did talk a little bit here about capital, so I got a couple of questions, but I can see that ongoing right now, because as your point, it's 20 years old. We think of it still as pretty new, but it's 20 years old. I can see things like the flooring being an ongoing yearly thing and things like that. So this is probably a pretty standard number that we're going to see, I would think, for a little while, give or take. That's was my thinking going into this, that there's some needs now that weren't before. So I have a couple of questions, and one is, it's specifically on line items. One is the dietary salaries. We still have a service to come in and do that, correct?
Yes, NMS, Nutrition Management Services, has been with the lodge decades now. They also work in other long-term care homes and school boards as well.
So is that money for salaries though, is that including them? Or is that staffing besides the diet service?
That should, the salary side would only include the lodge staff.
Okay, so that's lodge
Yeah,
staff
and then the
outside of the
contract,
service.
yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you. And the other one I did have, you mentioned on nurse practitioner, is that salary, that new salary, is that included in nursing? Just
Yes.
in the envelope of nursing?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
But it's fully funded by the province, is it not?
Yes, there's a
Yeah.
special pocket of funding apart from all the other pots and envelopes that is specific.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a win-win, right? The clients get quicker service if there's an issue and you're not relying on MLPS to come and pick them up and sit at the ER with them and that debacle that can happen. So I think it's a good add-on for sure.
Well, I wasn't getting at it as a negative. I think it's a big positive, and I know working with MLPS, there's a factor there where they can come in and work with the practitioner as well. So, yeah, I think it's a great win for it.
For sure. Michelle, do you have anything up there? Sorry if I'm keep forgetting about you. Okay. Anything else there, or will we jump into library next?
Yeah, we'll turn it over to Lindsay.
Doesn't mean you're all off the hook. It just means we're just moving along here.
Thank you to the committee for the opportunity to talk about library and early on budgets for the year. So I am just going to focus on 3 specific opportunities relating to those budget areas, but obviously I can answer questions relating to any line or area of the budget that you're interested in hearing more about. So first I'll start with the early on program hours expansion, and Joe did a great job introducing that. I echo and agree with everything that he said. I'd just like to add a few more points, a little context there. So we anticipate that the 2026 provincial funding for the early on program will remain at the 2025 allocation. So that's the $499,676 that comes from the province, flows through our CMSM agreement, and is directed towards to the library budget and early on budget. So this base funding supports approximately 2,000 drop-in program hours annually across the 10 locations that we operate out of around the county, plus an additional 570 hours in special programming that may be virtual, seasonal, or registration only. So some examples are our Ready, Set, Learn. That's our kindergarten readiness program, infant massage, open spaces, outdoor adventures, and our sensory program that we run as a pop-up in a few locations. So, and those are supported by 4.5 program staff across the county at those 10 locations. So currently, weekend and evening programs are offered on an occasional basis, but it is very limited, and that's due to our limited staff hours relating to that budget. And our annual caregiver satisfaction surveys that we run consistently highlight a desire for more programming outside of those traditional daytime hours. And I also just want to kind of draw some attention to what we mean when we talk about programming, because it can seem recreational. It could seem like, oh, this is a way for, families and caregivers to get out of the house and have a break during the week. But it really is that key purpose of the early on program is that school readiness piece, that transition to kindergarten, those early interventions related to development. So any challenges that, children might exhibit during that 0 to 6 age range. It's those trained program staff that are able to identify those situations and help make those connections to service providers and supports that exist around the county. So it really is about setting kids up for success. We know that early intervention is key to that, helping make those connections before kids enter school. And that's what happens in our current programs, but which can be extended with this additional allocation of funds. So as Joe mentioned, the funding request would support a year, a 12-month kind of pilot for additional program hours, 72 Saturday programs, 72 Kinder Connect evening sessions. So those are, again, making those connections to kindergarten and a child's movement into school, and 6 evening check and connect developmental screening clinics. So a bit more advanced developmental intervention opportunities at those programs. So that's our early on proposal that's before you. As well, with the library budget specifically, we're looking to complete a library facilities master plan. So Middlesex County is in a period of significant growth. We've heard that in a number of presentations today already. And this raises questions about how Middlesex County Library needs to grow and change in the coming years. The library system grew and changed significantly from 2014 to 2021 with the execution of the comprehensive library strategy, which was the result of innovation and forward thinking by County Council and the Library Board. And now we need some clarity around what our next period of growth and change should look like. So with a facilities master plan is a critical opportunity to help align our existing and potentially future library spaces with long-term growth and those evolving needs. By providing a comprehensive assessment of our current facilities and projecting those future requirements, this plan will help ensure that the investments, both at the county level and the local municipality level, are strategic, fiscally responsible, and responsive to the changes that we're seeing in all of our communities. And ultimately, a facilities master plan will position Middlesex County Library as an adaptable, future-ready resource. So you'll see that within the budget, we are requesting an additional $75,000 to our adding on to the existing $5,000 that we budget every year for projects of this nature to complete that facilities master plan. So projecting that budget of $80,000 for that project. And then finally will be the reintegration of the manager of library services position. So I have to provide some kind of history to help you understand this budget request. So our library services manager position has been vacant since 2017 when I moved out of that role and into the director of library services position. So prior to that, we had a longstanding CEO, Mark Rule was in place. As part of her succession plan, she and the county CAO developed an internal candidate to take over when she retired. And that was a really successful transition. And then when that person moved on, there was a bit of a period of change there where there was an external candidate recruitment process, and that relationship ended, and then I was positioned into the role of the CEO. So through that was a period of change, and I think that in order to support me and support that successful transition into the CEO position, I was kind of connected with the community services GM at that time. They were in place as a bit of a mentor. So there was that relationship between myself and that county director to help provide support and capacity and kind of leadership development during a period of time. And so at that time, the decision was made that the deputy CEO position, the library services manager position, wouldn't be filled at that point because there was that kind of additional capacity and support. So that relationship was in existence beginning in 2017 and ended around 2022 when I kind of, was put off on my own, I guess, and fully transitioned into the role. And that was kind of a unique position coming out of the pandemic. We were restarting library services, things were ramping up. So in those 3 years, we've seen a lot of change and growth, and we're at a point where that library services manager, that deputy CEO position is needed to provide that support and system-wide management that was there in 2017, was there in a different capacity between 2017 and 2022. And so that's what we're looking to reintegrate. I can provide more information about in 2017, when I made that transition, I carried over a significant portion of that library services manager responsibilities and portfolio. So I've been doing a lot of that work, obviously, since then. So things like health and safety, branch and headquarters facility management, supervising library headquarters staff, procedure development, and all of our branch development activities. So renovations, refreshments, those sorts of things. And so it's been juggling both of the job descriptions and those portfolios. And I feel that we're at that point where looking forward to our major projects in 2026 with the facilities master plan. We'll be migrating to a new library software system. It's the right time to make that change and reintegrate that position into our system. Happy to answer any questions on any of those projects, as well as any item in the budget.
Okay, are there any questions for Lindsay? Councillor Grantham?
A comment and a question. I was glad to see that you're looking at increasing your digital collection, because I have 4 books out as of today. So the more you can get out there, I'd be happier. It's save a lot of money. Early on, I've kind of paid attention to it over the past 3 years, but just now that I'm on the budget, so the early on is funded through the province, am I correct?
It is currently 100% funded.
100%, but there's a time that could possibly go.
That there is that opportunity, right? Where, we continue to advocate for more provincial funding, both locally, like within, county staff and work of counselors. And we're hearing that from other areas of the province as well, that it is a program that needs more funding across the board. But we are at that point where, in order to make this jump and meet the needs of our communities, there is that opportunity for county investment.
Okay, yes. So the second part of my question was, and I'm in favor, the addition of the evening and weekend, was that driven by a request from the community? Is it something that we saw as an opportunity?
I think it was both, but really from those caregiver surveys and conversations that happened during programs, we got that feedback from community members. We know that with library programs as well, right? You're hitting some people during the day, but not everyone. And we do believe that there are unique needs and opportunities that exist in those families that can't attend programs during the day and would benefit from those evening and Saturday hours.
I guess, sorry, I didn't have I guess my question is to the CEO, highly successful program, and we're creating an expectation amongst people that, if the funding ever goes away, we're going to have a decision that we have to make.
Yeah, in the most respectful way. That's why they pay members of county council the big bucks to make those decisions. But utilizing the term investment, I think you'd be far pressed to find a greater investment with return on investment than the early on program and what the team at Human Services and Library Services does for our community. And I think even from the budget advisory survey we did, in addition to all the great work with engagement that Lindsay and her team does, this is number one, and the potential impact of just that early on investment will go on for a long time.
Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Just to kind of go further to what Lindsay was saying around, Paul saying around the funding model. So early on is part of our agreements with the City of London. And, it isn't just the City of London. I think it's across the board. Early on needs more funding for the London Middlesex region. So like all of our funding through all of our provincial programs, as you said, if that funding goes away, you're right, absolutely. All of the funding for Ontario Works Homelessness Prevention, all those programs, including early on in childcare, could potentially go away. We obviously advocate on many levels, including council level as well, to maintain that funding level. As of right now, this is the amount of funding that we are able to get from the city and the province. So I think, as we look at our needs in the county, that's why we're asking for some of these requests to increase
Thank you. I'd just like to add that, you know, a lot of these librarians that went to university and got a degree in library sciences, I don't think they ever anticipated that the library would be such an important part of every community, beyond just getting books out and help that way. But like all of these libraries, they're a great hub. We even heard this morning today, you know, helping out the health unit, delivering some services there. And I speak from personal experience. I was pleased to go on a fulsome tour of the library, and it's really remarkable the services you provide that so many people are using, like the computer literacy courses for seniors, just to mention that one. But you know, if you don't know, it's not just a place to go get a book and go home. Like there's a lot of other the services being delivered there and opportunities for people to participate in that enhances everybody's life. So I'd just like to thank you for that. Councillor Rob?
Okay, thank you. Lindsay, I have two questions. One, just on the manager of library. So do you feel that you're missing things or things you could be tackling that you're not able to because of the dual role? And I'm not opposed to the position, that's not it, but like just what can we gain? Is it, or are you just overwhelmed from it? Or just some follow-up?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm overwhelmed, right? It's a lot to manage. Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm not someone to say no to things, right? So you take on more, you do more because it's for all those things that the warden just pointed out. But it is really, I think, a period of transition where the attention of the director and CEO should be at those higher level projects, you know, relating to strategic planning. We just completed our strategic plan this past year, executing that, making sure that we're maximizing that as a tool. You know, working on those projects like the facilities master plan, to doing that planning that's going to set the library up for the next 10, 15, 20 years, because it was that plan, you know, 15 years ago that led us where we are today. And now we need to be making sure that we're staying on top of all of the service areas and looking for those opportunities where we can expand and, you know, continue to operate at that high level for our communities, because we've created that expectation, again, service expectations, right? And it, you know, things always have to give. You're always pulled in 100 different directions. And I think every department head feels that way as well. But it just feels, because we had that capacity and I could see how that structure worked, you know, prior to 2017 and the potential that there is moving forward. I think that's why, you know, this opportunity is brought to you today.
Okay, thank you. I can certainly say you've given it an opportunity. I mean, it was in 17, so it's been a while. But so I'm supportive of that. I do have a specific question on line items, and that is, I can't find it. Maybe you can tell me, where's the cost of the board? Like, the cost of the board is in this. I'm not seeing it.
Yeah, through you, I'll jump in. So we carry the library board cost in our governance budget. That's the way that's been done historically. And I'll kind of reiterate, the same way that we cut down counselor expenses to actual historic levels, we've done the same thing with library board members as well. So again, we budgeted for the full suite of conferences and whatnot within the governance budget historically, and we've knocked that down, I believe, 10,000. Yeah, the expenses associated with library board remuneration expenses has been knocked down $10,000, so cut in half.
So that line is strictly for the board's expenses?
Yeah, in governance, there's 3 library boards. So for basically our boards and committees, for the most part within governance, we carry remuneration, benefits, expenses, and the remuneration and benefits have cumulatively, let's say $700 worth of increases, but the library board expenses have a net reduction of $10,000.
Okay, so I guess my point to this is I see the line that we have for training for your staff is pretty small compared to the line we have for governance for convention. What do you feel? So my question to that is, do you feel that we're putting an adequate amount into training for your staff?
Great question. I think we are, it's consistent with what we've had previous years. But it's also a unique situation because we do have staff in 16 locations, predominantly part-time. And the fact that a lot of our training opportunities have moved online. So that really cuts down on your costs. So, it's a line that I think is well funded for what we need right now. And I think it's consistent with what other library systems are doing.
Okay, thank you.
So not maybe part for today, but maybe a takeaway is, we're all about what are we getting for value for money at the end of the day? And if you're concerned about conference expenses in general, I sit on several boards that it has to be on a rotating basis. Not everybody goes. So that's a takeaway that we can look at from a different angle, but not for maybe the budget today. But I think when we go to do these compensation reviews, that could be a topic that's brought up because I know where you're going with this. So, and I'm okay with that. So I'll turn it back over to Paul at this point.
No, I was just gonna say it aligns with the previous comment about the remuneration bylaw, and that's contemplated within a review for as we go forward here. So if you're done, we'll pass it over to Adam.
Thank you. So we can start with highlighting some of the opportunities that we have available to us. Some of the examples we would have are the Care First Response initiatives that we put into place. For example, we started with a first response unit for low acuity calls, which provides an opportunity to provide care for patients in the community and refer them to a community paramedicine program. This gets patients in contact with the right kind of care when they need it, and also diverts patients from an emergency department. That has multiple positive impacts within our system. Our patients are getting the better health care. The citizens are receiving the care that they need, but as well, we're alleviating some of the pressures within the 911 system. So when we're looking at the paramedic responses, if we don't necessarily have to send a transporting ambulance to manage a call that community paramedicine can do, we're able to provide better care, but we're also allowing a transporting ambulance to remain in the system. To partner with that, we have an advanced care rapid response unit, which is able to provide advanced care paramedicine to patients for the highest acuity of the high acuity calls. This model has proven to be extremely impactful within our community. It's bringing advanced care resources and advanced care paramedicine to patients when they need it the most. It's also alleviating some of the additional redundancy with sending multiple transporting units to get an advanced care paramedic to the patient. We were managing to reduce our response times, and we're able to provide additional care within that community. When we're looking at the paramedics themselves, we're also offering opportunities for paramedics themselves to be rejuvenated and being able to do a lot of the skill sets that they've been able to provide. And we're seeing the skill sets of the actual paramedics that are on this special team. We're seeing them skyrocket in with what they're able to do and what they're capable of. All in all, it's been extremely successful. We have an opportunity we've introduced several system performances when we're looking at technology, specifically with software enhancements, whether that or through their ambulance call report softwares that we have and mobile dispatching softwares that we have. We have an opportunity to improve the data analytics that we have. We can improve the deployment in which we send out ambulances. And we also have an opportunity to reduce some of the strain and workload on the paramedics. So we can reduce some of the normal daily stressors that they would have with trying to navigate to calls, but we're also improving the response times in so doing. When we're looking at the EPCR software, so the call reports that they have to complete on every single call, when you're doing 100,000 of these a year, they take up a significant amount of time. When we're able to reduce the amount of time and provide better patient care software or better patient care records, it's an improvement for the service, it's an improvement for the patient on the downstream side of when they're being reviewed by other healthcare practitioners. From the paramedics perspective, we're able to reduce some of the actual administrative workload for them, and we're putting them back out into the system where they want to be, and that's servicing calls. From a service perspective, we're able to return unit hours back into the system through the use of this software. So it's also extremely beneficial. We're able to provide better care to the community, but we're also able to alleviate some of the stresses that we have with our staff. We're able to, or we've had an opportunity to expand some of the partnerships that we've had with hospital, public health, including the Ministry of Health, who've been very supportive in a lot of the initiatives that we've put forward. The budget that you're seeing, we have several factors that play into part, and three of the large pressures that we would have, we're looking towards some facility renewal initiatives, primarily within, you'll see within the Waterloo stations and the Trossach stations. In order for MLPS to be positioned to be able to continue to provide that high quality patient care, we need the facilities to be able to support what it is that we're doing. Those stations, they're strategically positioned and they're optimal for where they are, but they do need some enhancements and some improvements in order to be able to substantiate our continued deployment from them. We also have a considerable pressure when we look to WSIB. The role of a paramedic is a stressful role to begin with. We have provincial legislation that does play a part in WSIB claims. The more calls that we see paramedics responding to, the larger the service grows, the more exposure paramedics have, and the more people we have potentially be exposed. That being said, MLPS has been working very proactively throughout the year, and we look to continue the same initiatives that we have and expand on those into the coming year to help reduce some of the pressures that we have within the WSIB, whether through return to work opportunities that we have, some enhancements that we can provide to the patients or to the paramedics as well. And then the last one is workforce competition. We're currently in the process of collective bargaining. Workforce competition isn't something that's unique to MLPS. The paramedic industry is currently undergoing expansion. We've seen the expansion happening over the last several years. If we take our time and go back into the downloading that we saw from the municipality or from the province down into the upper tier municipalities, that provided opportunities for municipalities to expand what it is that they're able to do within their communities. And that resulted in a lot of hiring within the paramedic services. Those paramedics are now coming close within the next several years to hitting their retirement ages. So we have an impending bubble of staff within MLPS, but as well across the province, where paramedics are going to be retiring in the next little while. There is competition for talented workforce that's out there. And we're also seeing the province potentially it's in the process of transitioning from a 2-year to a 3-year degree program for paramedics. So there will be a short period of time where there's some overlap, where there will be a reduced number of paramedics that are out there in the community. So those are some of the pressures that we have in front.
Councillor Grantham and then Councillor Rob.
Yeah, thank you. And this question maybe the board can answer, but I'm looking at the math. It might not be for you, Adam, for somebody. So the 2025 actuals, that's for 3 quarters. Is that correct? So if I annualize that, I come up somewhere between $65 million. So to me, there's a bit of a gap between what the potential actual could be for this year and then what the ask is for next year. So my question is there big bills coming due, or am I missing something, Paul?
If I may just answer from our funder perspective. So a couple things. Number one, it's difficult to annualize the MLPS budget because of the way it is as a board. At the beginning of the year, we transfer the full amount of capital. So that is number one. Number two, the way the collective agreements are structured with the paramedics, at the end of the year, there's a significant payout as well. So you can't really annualize that. I would say as the funder, and Adam can speak to it and perhaps Brian can as well, the collective agreement would be retro to January 1st of this year, and that has not been implemented yet. So you're carrying an allocation for that. And then you are also carrying an allocation for the significant WSIB liabilities, which again would be allocated. So I think it's fair to say that the MLPS budget, although there is lots of moving parts and levers, will be very close to what it's looked like at historic year ends, where anything that you would typically call a surplus in a different service area would work to fund the WSIB liability. So it will land very close to budget.
Perfect. That was a great answer. Thank you. I understand.
Actually, that was some of what I was gonna talk about, but my only other thing, Adam, why has it gone from 2 to 3 years? Is it expanded training? Like more expectation?
That's exactly what is driving that. The paramedic industry has been growing. There's been new requirements, new procedures, new expectations that have been passed down into the paramedic profession over the course of time. Now the 2-year program it doesn't have the capacity to be able to get all of that knowledge as well as the practical skills that are needed during that program. Similar to originally, paramedicine has started as a 1-year program. As paramedicine evolved, we saw that move to a 2-year program, and now it continues to evolve. The more the advancements that we see, the more medications that they're able to deliver, the more skill sets and interventions that paramedics do. We're at a tipping point now where most of the bulk of the 2-year program that they're doing doesn't provide nearly as much time as they need to delve into some of the pharmacology or the medic trauma that they need to do, as well as the skill sets that they need to do. So moving to the 3-year program, while there might be a short-term compression issue when it comes to the staffing, but will actually help paramedics come out trained a lot more than what you're seeing now. They're getting the rest of that training in-house with MLPS. When we're onboarding them, we still have some training that we have to do with our staff.
Not to put you on the spot, but just from a loosey-goosey percentage wise, how will MLPS be affected with retirements maybe in the next 5 years, even like from a percentage, are we losing half or like that's a lot of experience, so.
That's an amazing question because within the next 5 years, we would be looking to lose between 10 and 15% of the current senior staff that we have now. But we've been very proactive over the last 5-10 years where we're onboarding more and more part-time employees. We're bringing them into the full-time fold. There's a lot of corporate knowledge that gets lost. There's a lot of familiarity with every paramedic service has very specific things that they do. There's MLPS isms that they would become accustomed to. So we want to make sure that we have that knowledge translation that moves down. So while we will be losing people, we're in a position where we've protected some of that information and knowledge, but we also then have to make sure that we've recruited enough people to have them starting anew, because we're moving everybody up through the system. So we need to start at the ground as well and make sure while we're taking care of the people on the higher end, making sure that knowledge translation is there. We want to make sure that we have people now that are new into the system so that they can also move through. So.
Sounds like you're on it, which is great. Just an aside comment, I attended Survivor Day and it really speaks to your rapid response or your advanced care. And, when I first went to one a long time ago, there sure weren't as many people that were at Survivor Day. So it's really made an impact in the community and I think it's a valuable service. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so I think I'd be remiss, we don't have a slide for it, but I know Councillor Grantham would ask about it. The housing advocate role was added in as a business case last year. There was 160,000 from reserves allocated. Yeah, so I would say this on that. I've had the opportunity to speak with Councillor Grantham beforehand, and obviously our organization went through a significant amount of organizational churn and evolution in 2025, and that project would come back to council at year end. and be a project that would roll over as a works in progress. So staff still owe a report back to council on what that would look like, that job description, those key qualities. So our full intent is, following further conversations with the local CAOs, to bring that report back to council for council consideration, and we would get direction there. But there's nothing within this budget that prohibits or inhibits that. That would be a future decision of council that remains outstanding.
Yeah, just for clarity, because we've already approved that. so,
Yes.
In principle, so.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of getting it structured and what that's gonna look like and how it's gonna be.
Bingo.
Yeah, perfect.
So then if I may, if you can go to the next slide, I would just say, like, I'd hit on a few summary points and then we're happy to go in more detail. But again, just to restate, just over $200 million budget, 3.87 levy increase at this point in time, 27.2 million capital program that does include the archives feasibility study that was directed at the most recent council. You're funding your capital program at 92.1% of life cycle needs, maintaining that low risk AMP status. There's some awesome targeted enhancements, investments in service areas that will really make a difference in the community, both from an individualistic perspective and from a tax assessment diversification, and creates a great opportunity of leaping off points for enhanced relationships with our local municipalities, where we can work together and strive to make that difference in our community. And then significant process improvements within this budget. Again, the team has done a great job of doing everything differently here for you to consider. So just shout out to them for that. And then really, what does this budget achieve? It gives us, at this point in time, subject to any more revisions from council, a foundation for future growth. We continue to close the infrastructure gap and have really highly classified infrastructure, thanks to Chris and his team. We strengthen our reserve capacity, although we do utilize them. Overall, the trend is upwards. We're preparing ourselves for major infrastructure cycles, as Chris pointed out, with our bridges and culverts, over 250 of them. We really focus on strategic alignment with county's updated strategic plan by advancing this sort of service excellence. And it with some of these structural changes, specifically removing reserves from operations for ongoing expenses, and line by line improved transparency. So it really positions well for the future. And with that, I think we're ready for any additional questions the budget committee may have, but I think I'd make a statement on behalf of the senior leadership team that we appreciate the time that you likely used in the month beforehand to go through this. We're happy to answer any more questions, but as a team, we don't want to spend 4 months doing a budget process. We want, we'd love to get this to county council and allow us to get to work in January on the budget versus waiting till March or April. So we're all here ready to answer any questions you may have.
Before Councilor Grantham says anything, I just want to thank you for the way it's been presented this year, where we haven't started out at 12 and figured out, where you just went right to the bone from the beginning, so that we're not wasting everybody's time. I guess that's a nice way to put it. Anyway, I had something else. I've lost it in my brain. Councilor Grantham.
I'll talk long enough so you remember your point. To you, Paul, thank you. I echo Warden Clark's sentiments. The 3.6 levy, though, what does that translate into a rate increase? Because I know here in Strathroy, we had good news regarding growth. So does a growth number go back in to bring it down to the rate?
Yeah, and 3.87 is the number. And obviously we'd want to run our full calculation after the fact, but our in-year growth from 2025 assessment growth at preliminary roll return. So again, we'll get the final this week or next, but our preliminary, and I'm looking at EWAC so she can correct me when I'm wrong, was 1.1 million growth within 2025, which equates to just under or just at 2%, let's call it. So on final roll return, it might be nominally more, but that's a good news story and speaks to also a good news story in a lot of our locals as it pertains to assessment growth. And just diving into that, we can do a little more detail when this comes back, but it's assessment growth where we want to have that assessment growth proportionally.
So that brings the rate then down, you said 3.8, somewhere around 3% tax rate.
Yeah, we haven't
Somewhere
run, we
around.
haven't run the rates yet, but the rate change theoretically is lower than the levy increase because of the in-year assessment growth. And EWA's not saying no, so I'm comfortable saying that, but I wouldn't want to go any
Yeah.
further.
So the levy growth that you're at, did you set out with a target? Are you given a target or you just happen to get there? Did you happen to get to the good news?
Yeah, through you. So honestly, we go with council's direction, and then that's how we'll try to do it on a go forward is say, don't give us a percentage, give us what you want from a service and a policy perspective. And we interpret that as maintain levels of service and then make targeted investments, but highlight where those are. So that was the approach we took. And then also understanding that it was important, as had been raised previously in budget committee by Councillor Smybert and others, to make this sustainable. Like, let's not use reserves in the operating budget. So we focused as a team on a reset. And I think if you really look at that, 6.3% is what we took out from reserves, right? If we didn't have to take that out, the transportation or asset management plan could be fully funded. Some of these other assessments, right? 6.3% is significant. So I think it really just sets us up for those future years.
Anything else? Do any directors have anything they want to add or any questions? Just Paul.
I think since we're not seeing anything, Rebecca has something for your consideration.
Okay, we have a recommendation that the budget committee direct staff to present council with the 2026 budget with a 3.87 increase to the 2026 tax levy. Councillor Rock, go ahead.
So before we go to that point, I have a question, I think, for staff here. Do you feel there's any places in that budget where we've cut too low or any places where we have extra? I mean, I gotta ask that question, but I want to know, like, do you feel to get to here that we're good, that we're comfortable? Yeah, like it's just, I think it is, and I don't think, I'm not seeing, or I haven't seen fat on the budget. That's not what I'm getting at, but it's just, it's a concern, you know.
If I may, I'm going to speak for everyone here. I saw, again, Ewa was shaking her head, yes, we're good. But in all honesty, everyone here worked really, really hard to come up with very creative ways to get that 6.3% out and deliver this. I think everyone has to acknowledge, especially with a lot of the other stuff that's going on right now, that we've averaged a $2.3 to $3 million surplus at the end of the year, right? In the previous 5 years, let's say. There's no chance in 2026 that's going to happen. And there's a possibility that we might have to use a little bit pending council direction from the winter maintenance to level that out and to deal with stuff. But I would say the overall theme of this budget, it is reasonable. It makes targeted assessments and it gets all those other things out in 1 year. So there's no way you'll have a surplus like that. I can say that confidently. And I do not think after going line by line with every one of these senior leaders and their teams, there just isn't any fluff in there at all.
Okay, so my follow-up question is, I agree, we've used a lot of tax mitigation money over the past few years, especially since COVID and going forward. If we're not going to use that money, there is money in there now. If we're not going to use, which I'm not suggesting we do, if we're not going to use it, I would hate to see us just keep throwing surplus money into that for that reason. because there's projects coming up, to Chris's point and to other points, that are going to be big dollars. And if we're going to have those, I know this year, we're not going to, it's on YouTube, and I can remind you of it if there is one. But if we're going to have that surplus money, I don't feel it should just go to tax mitigation fund, which it has in the past. That's a comment.
Man, I think there's 2 points. So 2025, pending a few things, you will likely have a similar year end to what you've had previously, right? Because of the way of budgeting, because what's been done. 2026 would be the year that would be different. And that might be a new council that actually gets that report, right? but actually, I think you've seen from the updated financial services reports and the way everyone's contributing to those, and the Q3 performance report. The Q4 performance report will be the year-end report, and that will come to county council. And we're going to do things differently, exactly as you've highlighted, is that if there is a non-program funding specific surplus, we'll say, this is the surplus, this is where it's from, here's our recommendation of what you may do with that funding, but ultimately county council will get the decision-making ability to allocate that wherever you'd like to put it. If it's into the structure reserve or bridge and culverts reserve, if it's into the facility reserve or any other thing you'd like to invest it in, we're going to be very direct and transparent and coming to county council for that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, and just as an aside, the only one that kind of worries me is the transportation, because if we have like 10 snowmageddons, and I hate to even suggest that could happen, Chris, those are the tricky things that are pretty tough to plan for. But on the upside, not to put pressure on people to get the budget out the door today, but I know in our local municipality, the sooner you're on top of things and approving budgets, you go to the front of the line when you're looking at it, pricing for aggregates and things that transportation is going to need. So you're not like coming to them in April and taking whatever the leftovers are. So from a pricing standpoint, it's advantageous.
So I do agree with you, as long as we have the information at this time of year to go forward. That's
But to Paul's point, I think it'll be very interesting to see with this new approach, how we'll land a year from now, to see how that plays out. So yeah, there's always a risk for sure. Any further questions, comments? Michelle, go ahead.
Yeah, again, I just want to thank all of the county staff for all of their hard work in preparing the budget that was really easy to read and understand. And I think it puts us in a good spot financially in terms of, building up, those reserves, and also a really reasonable increase in the levy. So I am prepared, if it's okay, to move that we recommend approval of this budget to county council.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Moved by Councilor Grantham. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, seeing that we don't have anything else on the agenda here, I would like to ask for a motion to adjourn this meeting. Sorry about my voice. At 12:09 p.m. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councilor Grantham, seconded by Councilor Robb. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you.